Well, I got to be introduced to you by Vanessa, and I know you mentioned how you guys ran into each other and you had a conversation, and so I'm so glad that she did connect us, because I enjoyed our conversation where we just I mean, I think we went over the 20 minutes that we set up, if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
but it was really good, and I want you to come on here and share part of your journey and share with others what you're doing to help others with and I know you go into their minds, like, and you help them out, figure things out, for sometimes they're thinking different, right? We think different when we should look another way. And so sometimes we need somebody like yourself, kind of like a coach, and just guide them and help them along the way. So, well, I would love for you to just start off with who are you? What are you focused on at the moment?
Mhm. Well, and by the way, thank you for having me. I really appreciate that and the opportunity to help other people, and it's what I do. And I've been doing it for 30 years. I graduated from Fordham University in 96, and all the way fast forward into now, I've been in private practice for 13 years. Recently started a podcast, believe it or not. I've had 5 or 6 sessions, and I've had 2 former Major League Baseball players already, and I even had a guy on who had pulmonary fibrosis and had a lung transplant. So that was a very interesting podcast session that really moved a lot of people. It was very emotional and emotional for him and for me. And so that's a new part of my experience. And you and I had gotten into a discussion about my father. We talked about my dad leaving this earth in December. And the reason I'm mentioning that is he was part of the inspiration behind the podcast. And the the idea is I was going to do something like this without I was going to start doing it without being perfect. And I was just going to do it and let it inform me and let it take me in a direction, let it take me to a place without it having to be great, perfect. I don't have sophisticated equipment. I don't have, sponsors. I don't have whatever. I just have a background. I have the questions I come with. I come prepared. And I decided to let it inform me. And it's been a pleasant surprise in a very short period of time, but it brings together the culmination of all my experience. So I've been asking questions. I have been connecting with people. I've been, doing formal questions and going off the cuff based on my gut. So this is just me doing something that I've been doing in a new way, but I've been doing it all along just without a camera. And my father would have wanted me to go for it. And you and I got into part of the discussion of what it was like in the final moments with him, and he would want me to take the risks. But my dad dying and my dad's being ill for a while taught me about how to lean into difficult things. So there was the experience where the final day of his life, um, we weren't sure to give him time by himself to pass because he was not passing, and we didn't want him to be in pain. We wanted it to be something that we could be there for and help him through it and to direct him and to love him and to be soulful through it. So a part of me, we went downstairs to give him the space in case he wanted to go on his own. And I'm downstairs, and a part of me in my gut, I go, "This is not right. This isn't the truth." So I went back upstairs and I sat with him and I put my hand on his heart and I was moving rhythmically with his heart and breathing with him and giving him permission. And then the family came up and I encouraged everybody to come forward and we put our hands on Papa and he all of a sudden in that moment opened his eyes for the first time in a day. And I was over him and looking directly into his eyes and he took his last breath and it was celebratory and painful. It was, "Thank goodness this isn't drawn out, you weren't in pain. Thank God we were there to be there with you." But also to know what a moment needs by pulsing it, by sensing it, by feeling it, and there was something just not right, that wasn't organic, and that's why I followed my gut and went upstairs to be with him, to be connected to him, and then everybody had that same recognition, and even people I didn't think would be able to handle it, handled it with such grace. And we're so capable and so and you can't practice that moment because unless you've seen people die in front of you, there's nothing to prepare you for that. And as a seasoned therapist and coach, there was really nothing to prepare me for it. What prepared me was my leadership. So in other words, in trusting my gut and leadership, I could be there in that way. But I wasn't going to know how I was ultimately going to handle it. And there was a beauty and there was a deep emotion. And one of the things you and I talked about in our talk on our first Zoom call was what I would emphasize to the audience right now is whenever you have something really difficult like this, lean into it. Do not be shy. Give yourself permission to experience what is painful because there's a heart opener in that. So as painful as it is, there's something rich and there's no regret within it and there's a comfort. And so in doing what I do, it expanded my vision even further and deeper. And what I could bring to people, like even in this podcast or my sessions after my father died, was much richer and much more connected and courageous. And that's what it brought me was the courage that if I can handle this, I can handle anything. And that's why I decided to do the podcast. And then I feel like he's with me because my dad and I went to baseball games and one of the guys played on the Blue Jays and that was my first baseball game.
That's cool.
And so I'm like pinching myself, you know, and and just to have the level of humility in the guests, and yet they're a lot of them are peak performers, but you wouldn't even know it. You'd have to like you almost like when you introduce them, the world knows it, but they're just they're doing what they love and they're being themselves, and that's where the magic is, and I think there's something magical about helping people.
Yeah, there really is something magical. That's why I podcast too, right? So hopefully this episode reaches that one person that needs to hear it. So they know they're not alone. That's the whole idea behind mine. And so that's why I wanted you to share your journey. I'm glad you touched on your father, and you brought that up. I think in our discussion, I might have mentioned a little bit about my father. Like I didn't get that opportunity, right? He
Yeah.
passed and I got to see him in a hospital after he already passed, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So it's hard both ways. And, I'm talking from a son's perspective, right? And it's just, for me, it was driving the distance to get there, even though he already
Right.
passed. Because he passed at a department store and then they ambulanced him to the hospital and he was already deceased. But so knowing already I'm traveling that distance to see that, right? So that was hard there. And I don't know how hard it was for you to see that transition for your
Mm.
father, right? And that I can only imagine we could go both ways here and kind of go,
Right.
it hurts. It hurts it hurts no matter what.
Right.
Um, Now, if I remember correctly, you're the youngest of
Yes. Youngest of
okay,
four.
right.
Yep.
And so as the youngest, how do you see yourself stepping up and being the leader, in that position and maybe others for your family to
Mhm.
say, "Hey, come over here. Let's do this together."
Well, I think because of what I do, and my brother's respecting that part of the leadership. I had been there for my mom through most of my dad's challenges over the last 10 years and drove her to the surgeries, been there, you know, uh, in the room and at times when others couldn't. And my brothers have been very supportive and amazing. Um, and I guess they trusted my leadership and they knew that I was helping mom for a while and mom had expressed her trust in my leadership as well. And because of what I do for a living, I guess they realized that they could help in certain ways and that I could help in certain ways. And I was best suited to help in this way because this is what I do. And so it's a little unusual because being the youngest, you would think it would go from, the older ones down. And they've all been amazing. And but I also knew that I made a promise I was going to be this in this situation. And I ended up doing the eulogy as well. And my brothers helped mom with a lot of logistical stuff, but I felt very firm and strong in doing the eulogy. I knew that there would be a part of me that would come out. And even when I wrote it, I shared it with a friend and she only saw two spelling errors and that was it, only because it came from my heart. But I wanted someone to take a look at it. And it, it, I think it really represented what the family felt. And I just felt comfortable being in that leadership role. And I continue to want to refine that and build that leadership quality within myself. My mom had an accident recently where she hit a deer and the airbags went off and the car was totaled and she was okay, but they took her to a trauma center because she was 87. And at that moment, I'm like, wow, I got some work to do because I was shook by that. I was not expecting it. And my dad had just passed 4 months ago. So it's helping me to take a even deeper look inside and meet in terms of meeting my own needs and my own self-care. But it's also teaching me to have grace and compassion because we're all human here. Even if we've led in different situations, we all can lead, but we're all human and to have grace and compassion and also ask for help and allow others to step in my family, whether it be my brothers, my sister-in-law, whatever. They're all wonderful in what they bring to the table, and I'm honored to have that too. Um, but in terms of myself, it, I was like, wow, okay, right. Um, so I continue to work on my evolution and to have that grace too.
So what exactly are you working on at the moment now that you experienced that with your mother?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. There's different things I do. I have practices that I do daily. I do yoga every day. I hike. I do push-ups, different things. But I also have what's called the Liven app, Liven, and I check in with it every day. I check in with my mood. It gives me feedback. I check in with where I'm at. It gives me feedback like a live person. And I make sure that I start the day in a certain space. And I give myself permission to struggle, but I put myself into a certain space. And so my routine and habits sharpen the sword. They get me ready. And I do rituals before I come in the office to be ready as well. But there's certain things we can't truly prepare for. And um, but I've been better at lately, kind of saying no, and when I don't feel right, staying home maybe, or saying yes to things that are good for me. But and in terms of my mom, I make sure I check in with her and stuff, and she's doing really well. She's struggling with the grief, but I have to remember she's got her faculty, she's healthy, knock on wood, and she's capable of a lot. So knowing when to support, knowing when to step back, and knowing when to take care of yourself, I think are valuable things.
Yeah, you gotta give yourself that space, right? Separate
Yeah,
yourself a little bit. Yeah,
100%.
yeah. So what led you to get started with helping people? Yeah, with coaching and therapy and all that stuff.
Well, it's interesting. I think people when I was younger would come up to me, confide in me. I think they felt safe. And also, I had two parents in the helping professions. My dad was an administrator in the Yorktown School District and was very involved in special ed and stuff. And my mom was a nurse for many years. And so we had it kind of in the blood and in the family in that regard. And um, I was kind of undecided in my bachelor's, and I ended up finishing up with a liberal arts degree. But I took a year off, and then I got some information from Fordham about their grad school program, and I was like, wow, you know what? This feels right. And I did, 3 years of the master's, and then had two field placements, and then after that was under 6 years of supervision, which were required to be. So I got an hour of weekly supervision for the next 6 years. And 30 years later, I'm just refining it and kind of trying to expand my net in terms of the amount of people I can help, and in having a private practice, I can fill my schedule a certain way, but also like I don't work on Wednesdays. I work a half day on Friday, and I'm off on weekends. So I pile heavily. I just came in to your call right after a session, and I got two more after. But I I I can design my schedule. I can design my life, and which I love. I love being able to design and not just make a living. And people talk about retirement. I'm like, nah, I don't like. I ain't retiring at 65. I just want to find different ways to do this and yet enjoy myself and my life and just do this in ways that it doesn't burn me out. And I lately I've been dealing with a lot of CEOs and athletes and stuff and focusing on my using NLP and EMDR and Ericksonian hypnosis, using those And I'm working with the type of people that are already high level that just want to level up. So it's not always direct clinical clients that sometimes it can be a little heavier to deal with. Um, but I'm trying to find a way to do this that can keep the joy alive and the passion burning, I guess.
So you enjoy helping these people that are trying to get to a higher level
Hmm. I
versus
do.
the other clients that you could work with?
Well, I do both.
Mhm.
And I have people that are more clinical, but I'm still going to coach them in a certain way where I'm going to put a demand on them, and help them shift not just on the behavioral level, but on an identity level, because I don't think people truly shift until they shift their identity. And so what I mean by that is if you have a person that wants to change your behavior, they want to stop smoking. Well, what if you're have this identity of being a healthy person and you're becoming a personal trainer, or you're just a person that doesn't smoke, that's your identity. You have a better chance of shifting if it's on a level of identity as opposed to be just a behavior. So, as somebody says, I was I'm this depressed person and I'm the black sheep. I'm like, well, you need to change that identity because as long as you believe that, you ain't changing. So we have to figure out what do you want to become? So, and by the way, we can take whatever we want with us, but I think if we think deeper into it at an identity level and said, I'm going to become this compassionate, fun-loving, um, lover of life who likes to make change happen. Well, if you shift into that identity, you're going to look for ways to be that. If you're somebody who's depressed and anxious all the time and like, I'm depressed or I'm ADD or I'm these things, and you say that I'm on an identity level, you're going to reinforce that in your nervous system. So we want to focus on not what people are not, but what they want to become. So changing the identity, I think, is instrumental and fundamental when it comes to lasting change.
Yeah, and I can see that being tough. Obviously, I would think it's good that these people are reaching out to you and that they want to make a change,
Yes.
but to have that and that be like the foundation,
Yep.
yeah. I mean, for me, everything changed after I went through a divorce and lost my job, and so like that opened up everything right
Yes.
there. So, um, I don't know. Are these people coming to you when they go through like a life change like that, or they just say, "Hey, I'm done, maybe smoking or something. I want to get through
It's
this."
interesting because it could be a combination of both. And when we look at leverage, there's a couple reasons people came in that they're inspired or they're sick and tired,
Mm,
and the carrot and the stick. So the stick would be sick and tired, and the carrot would be, hey, I'm inspired by someone or something. And when you have examples of both, it's actually perfect because then you have more leverage, and you want to leverage them both. So somebody might come in and said, I've been through three therapists and nothing's changing. I'm depressed and all this stuff. And I'll say, great. And I'm like, wait, what? What do you mean? I go, well, I mean, are you at bottom? I mean, is this, have you decided yet? Like, because in your moments of decision, your destiny shaped. So have you decided that you want to change? Are you at that place of leverage where you're at bottom and you could decide it's bottom now? I said, but you have to be willing to be agitated sometimes. So, for example, when you went through your divorce, now your system's agitated, right? Now it's hard to see through all that, but then that agitation can lead towards the next step because you might not have taken that next step, or maybe you were blind, maybe you didn't see certain things, and that big life change just opened you up. And at first, it's painful and disorienting, but once we sit with that disorientation, it eventually clears, and now we have a new thing. So you were known as the married guy, right?
yeah.
But now here you are. You're a divorced person, right? So there's that identity. But that's what that was that. But then you focused on after that, what do I want to become? I want to become a podcaster. I want to make change happen. I want to influence people. And I think you're helping people with podcasts too, correct?
That's correct.
So you're still evolving from
Mhm.
all that.
Yeah.
It sounds like to me.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'm
Right.
enjoying every moment of it. Right. But it took that stuff to get me to
That's
open
right.
up and see something so much bigger.
That's right. And so that stick that that's I'm sick and tired or I don't want to feel this way. It sucks when you're going through it.
Mhm.
But if the person can trust that, it's like, all storms end eventually, right? And all winters end. So, but you just have to, and you're all excited about the winter ending, and all of a sudden you get a blizzard, and you're like, but you still know that the sun's going to be high and it's going to get hot out, and that spring always wins
Mm.
eventually. So, and it sounds like you took a lot of your growth from that place and used it to create.
Yeah. It was just funny how it just everything worked out, right? So it took me like a little over a year and a half before I even started the podcast after that. Because I didn't know what I wanted to do then. I was just working on myself, right? So
Right.
I was working on the areas and I was meeting new people. And, I would imagine most people that come to you are meeting new people and but they got to find the right ones.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yep.
Um, one thing I said, family is good, but they might not be the best thing for you, right? They want to listen to you, help you, but they might pull you in their direction because
Right.
you might want to grow and they don't want to see you grow and become
Right.
better than them. Yeah.
Right. That's common.
Yeah. Yes, it is common. So like, going out there, building your circle, is that something that you would tell your clients to do as well? Find different group of people or act hobbies to find?
Yes. This is something I've heard over and over again over the years. You are the average of the five people you spend the most time with.
Mm,
So what happens is if you want to level up, you want to find people that you can level up with, because some people, when you're doing well and they're kind of in homeostasis or stuck, you agitate their demons a little bit because you're doing well and then they have to look at themselves where they're not happy. And so that might either agitate them to the point where they change or just agitate them in general and they may not want to be around it. Or they might feel insignificant around you. What's really interesting is we all have a deep fear that we're not enough. But underneath that, even deeper than that, is not only am I not enough, if I'm not enough, I won't be loved.
mm.
And that's universal. So, so we have to understand that too. But there are some people that are invested and it gives them a lot of certainty to being stuck. It might meet three or four of their six human needs by being stuck. So we want to be people around people that we think are better than, or in a place where we want to aspire to, but that are really, they celebrate your wins, because some people are only there when you're down as a way of commiserating. You want to have people around you that can do both, that can also celebrate your wins. And not everybody can do that. And they get jealous, or it makes them uncomfortable. They have to look at their inadequacies or what they've missed out on, their loss of hope and dreams. So I would say, if I were to talk to a client, I'd say, yeah, your connection group is very important. And socialization is important anyway. With boundaries. But I think we need that. And I think we need it to grow and to get better. And connection is one of the six human needs. So I think it's important.
I agree totally. It was mentioned to you might know this more. You might know what it's called or something. It's like a target, like a bullseye, and you have your five people, whatever, and they're in the middle, and then
Right.
yeah. So you grow, and you're like, okay, I guess I gotta push this guy out this way a little bit. Don't need to talk to him as much. Let's bring somebody else in here.
Right.
Um, so I don't know what that's called, but I find that fascinating, and it works, right? So you can kind of just move the people around if you wanted to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think there are people that are, um, one of my dearest friends, he's like in my inner circle. I consider him a brother. And he's the kind of person that wants everybody to win. And he will help you with strategies and how to win. And they'll help you, um, shout out to Mike. He is really good at, he helped me implement Google Calendar in a certain way and do certain things, and he'll check in, and he's been watching my podcast and giving feedback. He's very interested in my family. He's very interested in, sitting down with my mom, after my dad had passed. We were out, and he was really expressing his condolences and stuff. But he's a Renaissance guy. He's great at a lot of different things, and so he wants people to do well, to get to their highest level, and he'll do whatever it takes to help that process.
That's awesome. That sounds like a very good friend to have.
He's a great guy. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta hold on to that, all right?
Yeah.
Um, so for me, when I was going through everything I shared with you, I didn't find that I could open up to a few. There was a few, not many, right, that I could share things, because I didn't take my relationship outside the relationship. But when somebody else isn't talking to you, you got stuff going on in your head. You got to talk to somebody.
Right.
Um, so having that, and that friend or family member, whoever that most trusting and loving person is that wants to be there, good and bad, it is essential. And I believe holding on to that person to make that relationship stay and keep growing is important. Um, After going through what I went through and finding new people, obviously, I got good relationships with a lot of people, and I encourage whoever's listening to this, like, if you're going through anything, and you can always reach out to Will or myself or somebody else, but just know that you're not alone and you can get through it, right? And so
Mm.
for me, it wasn't leaning on the best friend; it was leaning on a group of men that I had no idea who they were.
Right.
So that's where sometimes, like I mentioned, strangers are just there. So I is there like a specific place or anything like that you might tell them to go to? Or is it the hobby thing? Like, if they enjoy like pickleball or whatever, you just go play pickleball, or find people that are in some kind of an alignment with them to start with something.
Oh, okay. Um, so you're saying if somebody wants general happiness or general interest, like where to turn and what to do.
Yeah, and maybe they'll find that friend that would be supportive, not just in that hobby or whatever, right? But it maybe on the back end as a personal life.
Yeah, well, I think you know, I think there the unknown is a place to as it should be used as a playground. We have six human needs, the need for certainty, and we also have the need for uncertainty. So the need for certainty is security and comfort. In the unknown, which is the need for variety and surprise, if we need that, but if we have too much of it, we get nervous. With certainty, which is security and comfort, if we have too much of that, we get bored. But we need it, but there's a teeter-totter. So in the exploration phase of what am I going to move towards in the uncertainty, there might be a little bit of anxiety and trepidation to trying things. And that's what the example, what I was saying about the podcast earlier was that I was going to do it afraid or I was going to do it non-perfect and know that eventually that would dissipate, that it would be normal. It would be part of my life. So I think people have to be willing to try things and then also maybe make up even a bucket list of things to do that to check off and to do things that are scary. Um, when I was in the Adirondacks, I would tell people that, hey, have you ever been on vacation by yourself? And they would be like, no. I said, maybe you should give it a shot. And this one woman that I was working with went down to Key West and she was on a replica of the Mayflower and she raised a mast on the Mayflower, this replica of it. And it was the first time she ever went vacation on her own. I had another woman, I said, well, you should take some kind of risk. And we didn't even get a chance to discuss it. And in the next session, she said, I jumped out of a plane last week. I'm like, what? I'm like, what are you talking about? We didn't even get a chance to discuss it. And I was like, how was it? She was like, it was good. And I was like, wait, what? And it was crazy. But I think people could start with whether it be joining a club or playing bingo or doing a book club or trying a sport or hiking or doing anything that is going to stretch their parameters. I think when people are afraid of life, they get narrow.
Mm.
And I think that, like, you go to the same bagel place, you do that, and everything's like this. But let's say you went and did something like raise the mast on the Mayflower. You're now this far outside of your circle. You've created another ring in that bullseye. So now it's going like that. So anytime you do that, you grow. You give yourself the gift of that type of growth by dealing with the uncertainty and being okay with being looking stupid, feeling silly, being anxious. And I think that it brings you in proximity to more connection and a lot of other things.
Yeah. So you're talking about going out your comfort zone, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. I love it. And it is a struggle to say I'm gonna do this, but once you do it, you can go, that wasn't that bad, right?
Yeah, a couple years ago, I went on my own. I went to the desert of southern Utah, and I went to Bryce Canyon in Zion. So I flew into Las Vegas, and I spent a couple days there, and then I went to Zion, and Bryce, and I'm really into photography. It was actually a profession of mine, along with what I'm doing. And I went to Bryce in the middle of the night. There's a hoodoo, which is a column of rock, and it's famous. It's called Thor's Hammer. And I went there at night, and almost a full moonlit sky. And here I was in Utah by myself, photographing, doing a light painting because I was illuminating the hoodoo with a flashlight to illuminate it during this long exposure. And I'm sitting there in awe, like here I am, thousands of miles from home in an incredible canyon, doing what I love. And it created a lot of trust in myself that, hey, you can go away to the other side of the country by yourself for a week and take care of yourself and experience the adventure of that. And, there's things to be aware of. I know we want to be safe, right? We want to
Mhm.
be mindful of safety, right? And there were other people in the canyon that night because the people tend to go there during moonlit skies because you could see pretty well. But I was even sharing my photography with people when they were there, and so, but I was alone in the sense that I didn't know anybody. But it just was such a beautiful challenge, and it was a lifetime long goal that I wanted to do something like that. And I was encouraging people in my practice to do it, so why don't I do it, right?
Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I drove across, I don't want to say cross country, but to Texas and back, so
Hmm.
I was by myself and that was fun. Stopping at some places along the way. Again,
Right.
you want to be safe, uh, but you grow, right? You
Yes.
become this person that you never even thought of. So you just look for the next trip. Like I can't wait. Let's go figure out what that's going to be and let's do it.
Well,
Uh,
trusting that we don't have to know all the answers. We don't have to know to go. And most people, we don't. Nobody can predict the future, so they project based on their past what the future could look like, and that's
Understood.
not accurate because nobody knows what's going to happen.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. We're just
So
living off of what we know from before.
before, yeah,
Yeah.
and we might be able to predict with a certain degree, but we really don't know. So it's okay to not know, and that's where anxious people ask the question, "What if?" And well, so what? And that's a
Mm,
great way to counter a what if.
I love it. This is awesome. Will, how can somebody reach out to you, find out more about how you can support them?
Um, so there's a few ways. I think
Mm,
if you go on to www.willcooklcsw.com, which is my website, and I'm adding things to that as we go. I'm also on Instagram, um, Will Cook Coaching, and I have a photography page there as well. With they're kind of linked. Um, and the if you see behind me, the Will to Win,
I see it.
which is my podcast, which is on YouTube right now. Um, and I'll probably be splicing reels and things from it at some point for Instagram and stuff. But I'm putting it on YouTube, but I'm also posting it on Facebook because they're long. They're about an hour long, and I don't edit them.
Mhm.
So, but that's because I'm in the preliminary phase. So you could find me on YouTube, you could find me on Instagram, you could find my website, as I mentioned, willcooklcsw.com. But I've been posting a lot on the Instagram page, Will Cook Coaching. And again, I've been doing this 30 years, more traditionally for about half of that time. And then when I was at a group practice, I started getting into the alternative stuff and more of the coaching stuff. And then within the last 13 years, really been focusing on um, working with people on strategies to level up. And, that could be leveling up out of depression, or it could be leveling up in terms of I want a better result in something.
That's awesome. Yeah, we all want to reach a better level than where we are. I mean, that's what growth is all about.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, just being stagnant and just sitting in one spot all the time, it's not fun. I mean,
No.
for me, it's not fun. Others might
Yeah.
say, yeah, this is cool, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, I love to keep learning, and I'm again, I'm glad that we met and I got you on here and we touched a whole bunch. Like there's so many areas we could have dove in so much more and more in depth, and even probably more that we than we what we didn't touch. But I have one question to ask you. I ask everybody else at the end. So, what are three key things you've learned and used along your journey?
Oh, wow. Patience is not about learning how to wait. It's waiting for the learning
Mm,
and being okay with the process in that regard. We're proactive, but some things in life we just have to sit back. And a mentor of mine, Kevin O'Brien, said that to me years ago, and he wouldn't tell me exactly what he meant. He'd let me sit with that. That was certainly one thing. Um, I learned to trust your gut, that most of it's just noise. When you sink down into yourself and you quiet things, you realize how much inner wisdom you really have. And I think that people are thinking with their heads. They're thinking their gut is their head when it's just their head. When it's a deep place, and it makes a lot of sense. But there's so many different voices that are in the way. We don't always know which one is gut and which one is monkey mind, as I would call it. So that would be number two. Um, I would say the third thing is, and I have a couple things that I'm mulling around in my mind, but I'll go with one of them.
mm,
Um, I think one of the most powerful things is nature, and whether it be the ocean or the woods, um, I think there's a huge disconnect from that. That's actually where we came from. And the woods, which has been a part of my life for so long, my parents had a house in the Adirondack Mountains, in a town called Lake Luzerne for many years, and we started going up there in like '74. We had um, in '77 we had a cabin built, and in the elements, uh, snowmobiling in the elements, being on top of mountains, fishing, swimming, and you just slow down. Like I said, for the number two answer I gave you, is you can really access what's true and some of the best best moments with my family were there. And I think it makes you appreciate the earth and life and the rhythms of life and the magic of nature and animals. And I think it's a healing place. I mean, people have those mats now, those ones, that grounding mats. Well, you don't need a mat, maybe in the winter, but you can take your shoes off and walk around in the woods and ground that way. You don't need to plug it in. And so I think people, if you're lost, return to that element, that natural element, and I think you'll find a lot and you'll learn a lot about yourself.
yeah, I agree with that. So I can definitely go with the last two for sure. You know, trusting my gut. What I went through, I should just trust my gut back then because I felt it, right? But I was more focused on what was going on in my head. And then nature is a huge thing for me. You know, I just took my dog for a walk before we jumped on here, and just to walk alone,
Hmm.
just going down the street and stuff for 30 minutes, and you see the birds or whatever. And
Hmm.
like I didn't take my phone, so nobody's calling me. I'm not running
Right.
anywhere, right? But it is very important that we go ahead and get back into nature. So I like them. I like the ones you shared. I know you said you had a few more, but I appreciate you sharing those three.
Yeah, and just briefly, I mean,
Yeah.
the thing about a family, I think family, what I've learned about family is that, we all have special gifts to bring to each other and a special kind of love, and that if we can see the unique qualities in each person, we can really help bring those things out,
I love it. That's
and
awesome.
it's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, family is very important. I agree with you there. Cool. Well, thanks, Will. I appreciate you coming on. Um, I'll definitely, have you come back on, I think, because I think we could dive deeper if you're interested
Hmm.
sometime in the future, and just see where it goes. Because you're doing so much. And like I said, we touched on a lot of things here. I think a lot of people can walk away with something. And hopefully, if they find something that they need to connect you with, they can reach out to you and, hopefully you can help them along their way and their journey.
Well, John, I think we could cross-pollinate there because I'd love to have you on I guess, a guest as well if you're willing to do that.
Oh, absolutely. Podcasting? Sure. Let's go.
So,
Cool, Will. Thank you.
thank you.